Throughout history, the powers that be have snatched up subversive stories to control the narrative and make them slightly less dangerous while still allowing them to be subversive enough to be entertaining. An incredible 600 to 700 year old example of this to be found in Robin Hood, and you can see the changes that were made in Robin Hood in our current iteration of the character that we have today, which is Green Arrow, aka Oliver Queen. About the direct lineage here, as well as the way that Robin Hood helped shape the American mythology constructed around figures like Bonnie and Clyde, as well as Jesse James. We start seeing Robin Hood pop up getting mentioned in stories in the mid to late 14th century. The thing that's pivotal to understand about the first iterations of Robin Hood was his social class. He is not a peasant, he is not part of the landed gentry who basically have their own land and have other people working it, or they're renting land out. They're sitting around all day living comfortably. Something called a yeoman. These are the men that would largely make up the English longbowmen during the 100 Years' War. They are very strong because they have their own land perhaps, but they are working that land. They are cultivating it themselves. They're trying to feed their own families. We move through the 15th and 16th centuries. This is a subversive figure. He is a commoner. He is a stone cold killer. He is a scoundrel and an outlaw. He really is out for himself, but he does respect women. He is a man of faith, but he does not like organized government. He does not like organized religion. Very specifically, he sees those two things as forces of corruption. As we approach the year 1600, we get the first kind of piece of the puzzle that I'm talking about here, because we get the idea that he is robbing the rich and giving to the poor specifically. By the time that happened, the powers that be in England, the aristocracy, were already trying to take this subversive figure and control the narrative. Because starting very early on, but absolutely by the 16th century, we were seeing Robin Hood games where people would gather to kind of tell the stories, to act out the legends. They would put on a play, they would have festivities and eating and drinking. It was kind of a rebellious time. Rulers like Henry VIII became absolutely obsessed with Robin Hood. Around one of these celebrations, he even dressed up as Robin himself to surprise his first wife in their chambers. So on top of being a massive piece of shit, this guy was a complete freak apparently. But as we moved into the 1550s, rulers started taking the approach of kind of conservative parents towards their kids playing Grand Theft Auto. Oh, we can't have too much of this, people are going to go crazy. In Scotland in the 1550s, Mary of Guise, who was the mother of Mary Queen of Scots, started saying, look, we are done with this, I am banning these games. By 1561, she had pushed it too far, and the people said, you know what, screw this, we're still going to gather anyway. It was largely young people, came together, they elected their own Robin Hood, and they put on the plays, and they were armed to the teeth. See, then she had to very carefully manage her reaction, because if you crack down on that too hard, you just create more civil disobedience. If you're in power, how do you actually fix this? What you do is you grab a hold of this story by the throat. 1598, we have Robin Hood robbing from the rich and giving to the poor, and we get something called The Downfall of Robert, Earl of Huntington. It's written by a guy named Anthony Munday, and basically we're taking Robin Hood and making that kind of a secret identity for this Earl of Huntington who was wronged, and he was an ally of Richard the Lionheart. This is the moment that forever changed the future of Robin Hood, because not only are you elevating his social status, you are making him part of essentially English propaganda. You are tying him to a very specific moment, 1199. You're tying him to Richard the Lionheart, who is this symbol of English pride around the Third Crusade. This man who was a murdering rogue outlaw commoner fighting against authority, whether it be the sheriff or the church, is now just looking for the right authority to serve, right? He is looking for the true ruler, and that is who he will give his allegiance to. By about 1600, you have Robin Hood being performed in castles for kings like James VI. He would then be used as a tool for propaganda. In 1642, the Puritans shut down the theaters in London and they banned the play of Robin Hood. In 1660, the Restoration occurs. We have Charles II, and on the day of his coronation, he has Robin Hood being performed, but it's been twisted to be about him being reinstalled as king. The story that was once about Richard is now about Charles. This is very convenient. It makes the people happy. It makes them feel like all is right. The story again is no longer about authority, but fighting on the side of the right authority who is chosen by God. Robin Hood would see popularity wane in the 18th century until a bit of a revival at the end of that century. Then in the early 19th century, he pops up in Ivanhoe. You might remember the Wishbone version of Ivanhoe from back in the day, which was incredible, but I highly recommend you go read the book. In Ivanhoe, once again, Robin Hood, aka Locksley, is once again turned into a side character who is pro-Richard. He does his part and he stays out of the way. Moving into the 20th century, we see various iterations of this character in film, sometimes still serving as British propaganda, sometimes just as feel-good entertainment. Early 20th century in America, we were seeing the rise of a lot of cold-blooded criminals like Bonnie and Clyde, and a lot of these people, especially in the South, were mythologized. A. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director from 1924 to 1935, knew that the comparisons were being made to Robin Hood with some of these people, as Robin Hood was gaining a lot of popularity in the United States starting in the late 19th century. Hoover as well was a monster, but I think he had some validity in these concerns, because these criminals, especially people like John Dillinger, Jesse James, these were not American heroes. Jesse James had come 40 years earlier, but the conversation there was the same. These people were put onto pedestals. An American mythology around these men and women. They were people that really wanted to see them succeed simply because they were standing up to the powers that be. In reality, they were essentially all selfish monsters who deserved what they got. A film called The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I think it's one of the great films ever made. It kind of breaks down everything I'm talking about here. I think it's worth your time. After the 1938 Warner Brothers film, Robin Hood really was a concept that was on the radar of the FBI. It blew up in America and people loved it. Leads us directly into the Red Scare, where there were Robin Hood books actually banned. For the Red Scare in 1941, Robin Hood would leave perhaps his largest mark on American society as Green Arrow would be created. When he is created, he's really just a mashup of Batman and Robin Hood. He has an arrow cave, an arrow plane, an arrow car, an arrow signal. Oliver Queen has maintained this persona of billionaire playboy. Oftentimes he loses his entire fortune, but still he is starting out in the aristocracy. But you know, Oliver Queen carries forth this idea that was melted into this English propaganda, with Robin Hood going from this violent commoner to this aristocrat who chooses to come down and help the people below him. Despite the fact that Green Arrow often has incredibly progressive politics, he doesn't have quite enough power to really shake things up at the end of the day, because he's just a guy with a bow and arrow.